What up, guys? Welcome to the Stay Brave podcast. We're back for another episode, and this time we are gifted to have a special guest with us. It's Mana Shigematsu. What's up, brother?
What's up, man? I am gifted to be joining you guys on this. So
You're gifted, brother. You're gifted. Now, guys, Mana is many things, but he is also a physio here at CMBT Training Center. He is one of the strength and conditioning coaches, and he not only helps us when we're broken, but he also helps us get way stronger and helps us get smarter and all those kinds of things. Mana, can you explain a bit better than I just did as to what you are, what you do?
I thought that was perfect.
And what brought you here? Yeah,
that was pretty good.
You're doing well, man.
My brain's a bit fuzzy.
Quite poetic.
Yeah.
Quite poetic.
So as Miles was saying, my name is Mana Shigematsu. I'm the physiotherapist and founder of Ikaika Integrated Recovery and Performance, resident physio here at CMBT, which is a pleasure to be in this community with you guys. Got a bachelor's of science in exercise science over in the States. Did personal training out there for a little bit with high school athletes, college athletes. Then came down to the Gold Coast and got my Doctor of Physiotherapy degree from Bond University. And I've worked with a little bit of rugby with Bond. I was men's physio first team for the Gold Coast Knights for a few years. And then now working with some of the fighters. So I work with Shannon in his training camp and now Taser, and looking forward to joining you guys in Sydney for that.
100%.
It's going to be sick.
Awesome, man. And now, look, we had a little bit of a discussion before this and we chat a lot. And we were talking about how people, most of the time, only come and see you when they're injured. Do you feel like that's the case?
Yeah, 100%. And like, I can't blame them, you know? Like, I was that way too. And I think it's just because most people don't know any better. They think, you go to physio only when you're broken, right? Or like you're injured or you can't do something. But there's no reason why we shouldn't be taking preventative measures or just, resistance training in general for overall quality of life and it's not going to like eliminate the risk, right, of you getting hurt, especially if you're in combat sports. Like, it's inevitable. You're going to get hurt. But if we can minimize that risk as much as possible, why wouldn't you?
Yep. I love your the quotes that's on the back of your shirts and your motto, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but it says, "You're not broken, you're just not built yet." Is that right?
Yeah. You're not broken, you just haven't been built.
Yeah. Explain that.
So that's like from a combination of my experience and what people have come and told me, like everyone comes in and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm broken, you got to fix me. I'm broken, you got to fix me." And I'm like, nah, like, you might feel that way right now in the moment, but if we build you back up, like, you're not broken. Like, because to me, broken is something permanent. Yeah. Right? And from my experience, I've had a lot of injuries as an athlete growing up, 20 years in organized sports, even though that's from like a child all the way up to an adult, I still got pretty serious injuries, had 6 surgeries, go backwards, feeling broken, and then having people in my ears saying like, "You'll never be the same," type of thing, and then building myself up, to doing things I could even better before I was injured. So, I take that philosophy and that experience and I try to use that with other people because I feel like a lot of us don't know our true potential.
Sure, man. It's such like a depressing thing when you're injured, and I feel like it's such a pervasive mindset that like a lot of people fall into, myself included. Like, you get injured, maybe it's something that's recurring, and you're just like, fuck, I can't believe this is happening again. And it just gets you so down in the dumps because like any physical injury, it keeps you from doing what you're passionate about. But like, how many people do you run into that have just like resigned themselves to their injury and just seem like so hopeless? Like, is it a lot of people who are like really off it about their injuries and just don't see any way forward?
That was me.
That was you, eh?
Yeah. 100%. Because like, I'm one of those people who like don't go to anyone. I don't go to a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, I only come to a physio when it's like really bad. I'm like the worst patient.
I'm literally broken.
You cannot fix me.
Yeah, Mana's like, "Man, when did this happen? I'm like, I don't know, like 2 years ago. Like, fuck.
Shit.
I mean, like, you're better than most people. I mean, not most, but a lot of people, you know? Like, there's some people that come and see me and like, how long have you been dealing with this? Oh, since like I was 16, so 20 plus years ago.
Wow.
You know, and a lot of the time it's just they haven't been given the right guidance, or they've gone to people who've given them outdated types of approaches to treatment, or, you know, in this system, sometimes people just get pawned off. And then that's when they feel like hopeless and feeling like, you know, my injury is my label. Mm-hmm. And I think going back to what you said, I haven't come across a whole lot, but I definitely have come across a whole lot of, quite a bit of people like that.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
chronic pain people, not so much athletes, I'd say, but general pop. And where was I going with that? But I think the reason why a lot of people get down in the dumps is going back to even what Brenton was saying, you know, in your last podcast, is they attach their identity to whatever they're doing, and they're so passionate about it that when that's taken away from them, it's like a piece of themselves is gone.
Yep.
So that's why when I'm working with people, you know, it's not like I tell them, it's not just a shoulder injury or it's a knee injury. You know, it's whatever goal or thing you want to do in life that is attached to that as well.
That's so
and that's how I approach things.
That's so fascinating because it works in the reverse. Like, from my personal circumstances, like me feeling injured feeds into like my ego and my identity of myself, where I'm like, yeah, I'll just push through anything. And if I'm injured, yeah, that's how I perceive myself. If I was to look at myself on the outside, I'd be like, it's just this injured old guy that's just strapped up and just still gets in and gets it done. And for whatever reason, maybe I respect those people for some reason, but it's just like stupid. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, if I was talking to one of our athletes, I'd be like, why are you doing this? You need to go and sort this out. But when it is actually myself, like, maybe I've attached that
it's weird
situation to my identity.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's a, you know, because that's how I was too in sports growing up and stuff. You just push through. I like when I was playing baseball in my teen years, I was popping like 4 ibuprofen, go out and train like 2 hours, rinse, repeat, you know, because I just didn't know any better. Yep. And I think it's kind of that, you know, mindset where like if you don't push through pain, then you're weak.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like that fine line gray area. Like, are you being weak or are you being smart? Are you being tough or are you being stupid?
Yep.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be David Goggins doing Hell Week on broken legs, but you don't have to.
No, yeah, it's fascinating. And then it just becomes this whole like conversation about grit.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, how is grit actually built or born? And then it's just like, for me, I'm just like, oh, I'll just get through anything, pain and all this sort of stuff. But then, yeah, at what point is it you just being stupid?
Yeah.
And like not being effective towards what you're trying to do? Like,
and that's it, right? Like, and that's it, right? Like, at what point is that taken away from your goal? Because I think at that point you need to reevaluate and be like, okay, no, like this is where I've taken it too far, and we're being more stupid than tough here. Like, what do you have to prove?
Do you feel like so many athletes, though, they're just like, I can't miss time on the mat or on the field or whatever it is. So like they tend to just like choose to push through it so that they don't miss that time on the field. Whereas like if they just took a 6 week period to recover, rehabilitate, you know, and get stronger, then they're back on the field at hypothetically 100%. They're good to go. You know, and they've built themselves stronger than they were before, so hopefully prevented any injuries moving forward, and now they can compete at the level that they're training to compete at, whereas the guys that just push through because they don't want to miss the mat time or whatever aren't doing themselves any favours at all. It's like, it's so hard for us to pull ourselves out and have the discipline to pull ourselves out to do the work to make ourselves feel better. It's so hard.
Yeah, 100%. And like I see that all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, not only with combat sports athletes, but with any athlete. And I think it's a combination of, you know, that identity attachment and being taken away from what you love to do, but also like this pressure of what other people will think about me. You know, how will they view me if I pull myself, type of thing. And also not being able to take themselves out of that, you know, small moment in time. Like, because in the grand scheme of life, what is 6 weeks, really?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But people don't see it that way. They just like they're too caught up in the moment to think like, if I take like this, less than 1% of my life, to get better, stronger, and recover, then the rest can be that much more better.
Yep.
Sure.
And again, minimize or reduce the risk of that happening ever again.
I almost feel like that's a bit of a skill to be able to take a step back and just be the observer. Because like you said, there's so many things that are interplaying, like your ego, like your goals, your drive, your insecurity, because, you don't want to be that guy who's missing out on training. Like, I saw him, like, he buckled his knee training the other day, but it didn't look so bad.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he's just being soft kind of thing.
Yep.
That's hard to deal with.
And I also think that that's where it's so important to have the right people around you.
Yeah.
Because, like, when you have the right people around you looking out for your best interests at heart, they know what you're trying to achieve, and then they can see that you're injured and you're not achieving, like, the sessions that you're in aren't quality sessions because this thing is preventing you from doing what you're meant to be doing. Like, there's a point where it's great to have the right people around you that can pull you out and just be like, hey man, like, you need to go and see Mana. Or like Mana walks past and just like, hey man, what's up with old mate over there? Like, why? Like, he doesn't look too good. It's like, oh yeah, like. So I think like that's really important because a lot of the time in our own heads we're just trying to work out so much, and just like you said, Rhys, it's like so many variables, and we're worried about what other people think. We're dealing with our own ego, our own pride and insecurities and all these sorts of things. Sometimes you just need that guidance from someone, a coach or whatever, just to be like, look man, it's time to go and heal, and almost for your own sake give you permission. Give yourself permission, because you won't give it to yourself, because in our context of combat sports, these guys just keep going. They're not going to give themselves permission to rest, because it's seen as weak or whatever it is. So like having a coach or someone looking out for you to give you that permission is really important. And if you're not surrounding yourself with those types of people, like, man, you'll just find yourself in more and more trouble,
for sure,
essentially.
Yeah. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of people don't want to come and see the physio because they're afraid that they're going to be, say, oh, you can't do this, or you're going to be pulled from this.
Yep.
But it's like my job to give you my unbiased decision or recommendation, right, as to what is in your best interest in the context of what you're trying to achieve, without making like an emotional decision, right? So it's my job to take your emotion out of the decision-making process.
Yep. Do you feel as though, so ignorance is bliss. So a lot of the time you don't want to go to the physio or the doctor because they're going to say what your problem is, and then it becomes a thing that you need to address. But when you're ignorant to it and you don't go and see anyone and you don't know what it is, you can just sweep it under the rug, and that's easier for people to do. So a lot of the time they'll just avoid even knowing or putting a name to whatever issues they're dealing with right now, because that ignorance feels bliss, as opposed to like going to you, you're like, here's the problem, let's fix it. And then the person's like, oh no, now I've got 6 weeks, 12 weeks of rehab. I need to go through this somewhat strenuous program to like build myself back up. Because a lot of the time those like rehabilitation programs are so great, but they're so difficult.
Yeah, it sucks.
Like, it's like the hardest like form of like S&C training. Like,
it shouldn't be fun.
Yeah. I've had people say to me that Mana's class, like on a Tuesday at 7:30, is like the hardest class there is.
Yeah. And it's just like they're just trying to keep their body weight up,
yeah,
or like, elevate their heel off the ground using their hip flexor,
Stitch
like
up.
all that sort of stuff. It's like, that's the hardest stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that class too, like, I like showing people that, there's so much you can do with just your body weight.
Yep.
So much movements you still have yet to achieve, and break down, every little weak point and bring that to people's attentions. Like, that chink in the armor could potentially be where an injury occurs down the line. So, just by doing these exercises, we can address that. And that's just something, you can work on outside of your training, something to add to training. So that's a little bit of a component of that class on Tuesdays.
Do you know what I think is really interesting about combat sports specifically? Is because, like you said at the start of the podcast, like, injuries are somewhat inevitable. Like, it could just be something as small as like your fingers getting fractured or something. It could be, a knee issue, a hip issue, whatever might be, but you learn so much about your own body and just human, like biology and physics, anatomy and all those sorts of things just by doing combat sports. Because like the amount of times I've been injured, not so bad, but it forces you to understand what's going on in your body. And you might go and see someone like Mana and he gives you the, you know, educated information to like learn about what's happening in your body. And you learn so much. And it's so interesting how like you might just have like an issue with your knee, but then it progresses up to the opposite side shoulder or something. And like you don't realize how interconnected everything in your body is, and how if you have an issue with your bicep, it goes down your back, then it goes down to the opposite side of the knee, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're limping, and then all of a sudden you've got ankle issues, but it started like right up the top here. Sure. And it just shows how interconnected and important it is for you to like cover everything with like your S&C or anything like that. Like, what's your sort of, you know, recommendations to athletes listening to this to like prevent injury, make sure that their sport and they're focusing on the technical aspects of their sport, you know, first and foremost, but like, what do you think that they should be doing to prevent injury and, you know, ensure that they're feeling strong and feeling functionally fit and, you know, preventing injuries as best as possible?
I think it's a lot of shifting the mindset as to what that is comprised of to begin with. You know, as I was telling you earlier, and I was telling one of the other guys that trains here last week, I think most people see resistance training as either bodybuilding style or CrossFit and like nothing in between, right? So where bodybuilding is just mad volume, up and down, you know, controlled tempo, and then CrossFit is just mad load, speed, stupid intensity, right? Where you're just gonna get injured eventually. And like, of course, people don't want to train and get injured, so they can't train and be on the mats, right? But if you're training for a sport, you're gonna look at the movements and the demands required for that sport and tailor that training to that. So almost any sport, you're gonna need speed, explosiveness, power, and that's not gonna take a whole lot of volume like bodybuilding, right? You're looking at like high load, high speed, low volume, big rest. So you let your nervous system recover as well as the muscles. And then I think the other thing that people need to realize when it comes to injury prevention, right, is I don't know why I use this analogy of like a table, but you got that plastic table over there, right, that you guys are using for opening day. If all three of us sit on that table, thing's probably going to snap, right? But if all three of us sit on this table right here, this thing's not going anywhere, right? So it's building up the capacity and the resilience in the tissues so it can be able to tolerate load and stress and produce that same amount so that it reduces the chance of you getting injured. Because to me, what's an injury really, right? There's some weak link, and at some point, the load and stress exceeds the amount that tissue can tolerate. So if we build that up as much as possible, then we reduce the chances of, you know, the person getting injured.
100%. All right, perfect. We're done here. No.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, brother.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Man, it's just so hard. It's just like when you are involved in a sport, the fun thing to do is to train in the sport. But,
100%.
you know, when we talk about building a foundation that can support you doing the fun thing in the sport, it's like that one thing that you're just like, I don't want to have to do this. This is boring. This feels like I have to be disciplined to do this sort of thing. Like, does that always have to be that way? Like, I'm almost asking for myself, like, is there a way we can make it more enjoyable? Is it just like reframing our mindset on why we're doing it and what we're doing it for? And we should just be, you know, it should just be a part of being a human being that we're trying to, you know, build strong bodies, to be harder to kill and to be better for longevity so we're healthy over a long period of time. Like, is it just reframing the mind? Am I just thinking of it the wrong way? Because I always try and avoid it.
I mean, like, I think that's a big component.
Yeah.
I think that's a big component. That's probably why you avoid it, right, in the first place. But I think we can still make it fun at the same time. You know, like a lot of you guys' warm-ups with the fight team, like that's more fun stuff that can be implemented in an S&C program.
Yep.
So if we think outside of the box, you know, of course we can make it fun. But at some point, like, you're going to have to add load and heavy resistance to boost performance or get the body to adapt, right? To get stronger or to produce more force. So then you compromise the fun aspect, I think, because then you're going to make it unsafe.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line and a balancing act, I guess.
Yeah. I think something you said before, which is really important, which is a lot of people think of resistance training as bodybuilding and mainly for aesthetics. And then on the opposite side, it's like it could be CrossFit, powerlifting, it could be some competitive aspect. But none of us are thinking about getting old, you know, longevity. Yeah. I think that conversation is starting to happen a little more, especially with nutrition and all these sorts of things. But for whatever reason, most of us as humans think of what's happening in the moment, right here, right now. And a lot of us don't think or strategize in any way our health, finances, friends, whatever, for life, for a long period of time. Clearly, being in the field, you know, you're thinking about the long term, you know, of the clients that you're working with. So, you know, how do we encourage people to think about adding these sorts of things and resistance training specifically to everyday routines and just as a habit for longevity, and to think about getting old? It's a shit question. I asked the question pretty shit, but like, you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. I think you got to see it as an investment.
Yep.
You know, you're not going to do one session in the gym or like a 12-week fucking program and then like just be set for life, right?
Yep.
It's constantly investing into yourself and your health, and I think you got to stop thinking about just yourself. You know, it's how can you be the best you can be for those around you as well? How can you keep up with your kids, you know, your family, all those sort of things that we, I guess, kind of take for granted, like you said, just staying in the moment and not thinking long-term, big picture, right? Because I guess an extreme example to me, like a heart attack, that doesn't happen overnight. You know, that doesn't happen in the moment. That's years and years and years of shit decisions and poor lifestyle choices, you know, but we just see that moment. So I think we got to think of resistance training in terms of optimizing our joint health. You know, we see older people struggling to walk, sore knees, sore shoulders, hip replacements, knee replacements. Like, you know, if we don't take care of ourselves now, like, that's us in the future.
Is there much variation in, say, the protocol or the training regime of someone who is training for longevity as opposed to someone who's training for better health or better strength? Like, or is it all sort of the same? Like, obviously there's specific things you can do to strengthen certain areas that become problematic when you get older, but is the focus different, or is it a better approach for someone just to focus on improving their sort of health in the now, which will have the knock-on effect of keeping them healthy when they're older?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think that's what it is. You know, you put in the work now, and as a byproduct, you will continue to be healthy in the future. Like, granted, you maintain those habits, right? Because like I said, you can do some 12-week challenge, and then like that's not going to help you 10 years later unless you keep doing, you know, maybe not something as extreme as that, but keep putting some pieces into place where you're doing resistance training and taking care of yourself, making sure your nutrition is good, sleep, which is something I got to work on, but you know.
Is that something do you generally encourage people to be more consistent with less intensity, like over a long period of time? Like, obviously something committing to like a 12-week challenge, that's how a lot of people like to train. They find that super motivating. They're part of something. Maybe it's a bit harder for someone to motivate themselves to hit the gym 3 times a week. You know what I mean? Is it better for you to be just focusing on consistency over the long term?
Well, I guess it depends what you want. Knockout. We're good. I guess.
Just fiddle with it a little bit.
Oh, there we go. We're back.
Nice.
We're back. Yeah, it depends what you want.
Yeah.
You know, like if you don't really have a set goal, like say a competition or training for whatever sport, then yeah, it's longevity is just being consistent as much as you can.
Yeah, right.
You know, 2-3 days a week, whatever the recommendations are. Are we back? Yeah. I feel like they're changing all the time, but I think, yeah, you know, motivation is an external thing. It's a temporary thing. So I think, you know, if motivation is an issue, that's something internal. Like we got to look at ourselves and understand why. That's not like we don't have the motivation or we don't have the willpower to do something. Maybe we don't want it enough. You know, because I think if you want something enough, if you want long-term health, if you want longevity, if you're thinking about like other people around you and not just yourself, then you'll make it a priority.
It's a really interesting conversation, and I want us to stay on this level. But I just want to sort of, you know, go further into what you guys are saying about like longevity and health, and just saying like how important it is for us to have an optimal level of like lean muscle mass, and like how much it helps you when you do get older, and if you find yourself in, you know, circumstances where you might, you know, suffer with something like a cancer, or like you said, a heart attack, or you need to recover from something, like it's so important to have that lean muscle mass to help you survive through those periods. And like, you know, my family's just dealt with a terrible circumstance with cancer. And, you know, when we're in the hospital, the doctors are relating to how the survival rates based on like lean muscle mass and their ability to support themselves and recover from things like chemo or you know, all these things that impact your bones and you know, your help deteriorate your muscles and all these types of things. So like, that's one way to look at it. Another way, from personal experience, is like, you know, I was in an accident overseas once with my partner, and my partner's like super into weight training and has like got a lot of lean muscle mass on her. And we were on a quad bike, we went off a cliff, and she did somersaults, and she got pretty fucked up. And I knew for sure that if she didn't have that much lean muscle mass around her back, her butt, her shoulders and everything, she probably would have a broken back, like for sure. Like if she was just like a smaller, more brittle chick, like she would have been snapped in half.
That's that plastic table versus this table, right? Yeah,
exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So there's a couple of like examples that I've experienced in life where I was like, holy shit, like this is really important, and I need to focus a lot more on, you know, building a better foundation to be harder to kill, because the time is going to come where, you know, they're going to try and kill you.
Sure.
You know, something's going to hit you. And it's like, when we started the podcast, we talked about how we never think about the preventative measures of things. We always wait until we become injured, then we go seek some help. But what if that moment comes where there is no help that you can seek? Like that moment is your end. But it may not have been your end if you had a stronger foundation. And that's what we should have as motivation, to build the foundation for longevity.
Sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I think our culture that we live in is so designed for comfort that we just don't think about those times, those moments that'll come. And, you know, again, they're inevitable. So that's why I like the gym as well. It's a good, and even combat sports, just a good metaphor for life, you know, putting yourself through stress. So when the stress comes, because life stress is harder than any stress in the gym or on the mats.
Yeah.
We're prepared for it.
Yep. A lot of us, like, talking about society and culture right now is like, we want this like gratification quickly. You know, like we just want things just to happen for us immediately. And I think one of the things that like makes people avoid going and starting a program is that they have to start from the start, and they probably won't see results for a extended period of time. And I think that that's what puts people off from starting, you know, because we're so used to just getting that instant gratification. You know, we see something on social media, we want to buy that program because we want those abs immediately. You know, we injure ourselves, we go and see a physio, we book one appointment, and we think we get a little bit of manual therapy or something, and we're like, sweet, I'll be done after this.
Yep.
You know? When we go and see a physio, we just want a massage. We don't want a damn rehabilitation
feel
program.
good right away.
Yeah, I just want you to touch me and make me feel good, and then I'll walk out of there and I'll be like, yeah, no, I went and saw the physio. You know, like, but I think that's such a hard thing for you in this field to deal with, is knowing that is the psychology of like a lot of people that come and see you. I mean, it's good that they've made the first step to come and see you, because 90% of them probably haven't even made that first step. But it's like, how, you know, do you find it difficult to try and like get them on board for the long term and committed to the exercise of becoming stronger and healthier?
Some people, but I think as I've gone on in this journey, you know, like I've tried to tailor the little marketing I do towards the people who are already committed to themselves. You know,
those would certainly be the best people to work with, like
100%.
surely,
because you know, like
they're gonna do what you say.
Yeah, and your energy is precious, right?
Yeah,
I mean, otherwise,
sure.
you just have energy suckers, and it's not worth any amount of time or money that, you know, you get from it. So, the people that are committed and motivated themselves, like, they fill my cup back up as well. But I've seen this, you know, even when I was a personal trainer in the States, that most people, just their mindset has been the limiting factor. So I've always gone into things with the approach that you can't change the body until you change the mind. So I think that's always, from what I've seen, personal experience, that's always been like the biggest barrier, people's belief systems.
Do you find yourself having to advise and guide people on their belief systems? And if so, like what tools can you give them? Like where do you usually go when you see that as an issue?
It's a slippery slope, right? Because I'm not a psychologist, and it's like, you know, where am I overstepping boundaries? So I try to pick and choose who I do that with. I try to get a feel for who the person is in front of me. That's why my initial consultations are an hour. It's a lot of questioning, a lot of figuring out like where this person is on their journey, what they want. And that's what I usually use. Like, figure out what they really want. Like, what is that thing that makes them tick, and how is that injury affecting that? So if I can get to that point, you know, really figure out, you know, what is their real passion, or like, where's the core of this stemming from? Like, what made them finally come to me, you know? Then I feel like that's my opening to kind of slowly change those belief systems, shift the perspective a little more into that proactive, positive direction.
Totally. What sort of like baseline knowledge do you feel like people have when they come to you? Like, is it a totally wide spectrum? Like, do you get a lot of people who have misconceptions about their health, or have heard like things that has just totally led them astray? Yeah.
I'd say a wide spectrum. You have those people that are like, oh, you know, I want like a more holistic approach. Like, I know, you know, this is not just a one and done quick fix type of situation. Like, I'm ready to do this for like the long term, however long it takes. And then you have other people where they're just like, oh, just give me a program and I'll be good. Yeah. And then you have other people where they've just seen all, like, this is more specific, I guess, but they've seen all these images, and their MRI says they have bulging discs, and they have like advanced osteoarthritis in their knees, and they're just like, I'm broken, like nothing can be done type of thing. I don't know why I'm here, but I just hope you can help in some way. And so it's like debunking all of that too, you know, behind all these things that GPs have told them, and, you know, all their past experience. So it is quite a wide spectrum.
How do you feel about the information that's out on social media and people's interpretation of it? I mean, we get so many, you know, you just go on your feed right now and you'll see 10 different, you know, influencers and even scientists and things explaining the same thing differently 10 times. Like, do you feel like there's, you know, what is your personal like experience with that and beliefs on that? And have you found that social media has been quite disruptive to our ability to find the right answers, or do you think it's been a positive thing? Like, how do you feel as it?
I think it's been a positive thing in general compared to where we were at in the past. I feel like more and more people are making health a priority, but I think it's hard for practitioners and the general pop in like, you know, across the board, because for the people putting out content, like the influencers out there, some of them actually have decent content, but, you know, as a society, we have TikTok brain. Our attention span only lasts like, 30 seconds on a reel, 20 seconds if that. You know, so how do you give people a whole story or like all the information they need in like 15, 20 seconds? You can't, you know, and unless people like constantly following that and getting every little detail, like they don't see the full picture. They're like, oh, this works type of thing. And then, you know, then there's those other influencers out there that, you know, have good aesthetics and they just regurgitate like crap that everyone knows, or like some stuff that's just misleading. Or like we talked about earlier, you know, like when it comes to training and nutrition, there's a lot of people out there that are like, my way is the only way for everyone. And I don't think you can extrapolate health and wellness as a one size fits all type of thing. You can't extrapolate your way to a whole population. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I guess, for example, too, like with research, people don't even realize how much you got to pick apart research to know what's reliable and what's not. You know, just because you find something on Google from like a doctor doesn't mean like that's a reliable source. I like doctor is not even a, what is it? I don't know what the word is, but like anyone can call themselves a doctor in Australia, essentially.
Shit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess a good example on the way here this morning, I saw Jeff Nippard. Do you guys know who that is? So he's just like some guy in the S&C space that's really big into research and whatnot. And he said, you know, are cheat reps, you know, where you compensate like better than strict reps. And they did a study on 30 people doing cheat bicep curls, beginner level, training level, and the others were doing strict bicep curls.
So when you say cheat, that's like when you use your body weight to
heave
it up, like
chucking the back up, you know,
really
using the shoulder.
Yeah.
And the results were there's no difference in hypertrophy with cheat reps versus strict reps.
Interesting. Wow.
So, you know, someone in the general population can just look at that and be like, oh, I can just, you know, chuck weight up. Yeah, anyway. And there's way more to it than that, right? Like, what is the age group of those 30 people? 30 people is such a small sample size as well.
You did the minimum sample size.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure 30 people.
Like, so you're going to extrapolate one study on 30 people to the whole world. You know, it's things like that. So,
yeah.
It's crazy. And what do you think about ChatGPT? Have you had clients come in yet, like self-diagnosing themselves and giving you the...
Oh, Dr. Google, not ChatGPT, but a lot of Google.
Yeah.
And this is a good one. I haven't told anyone this one yet, but diagnosing yourself off of Google or the internet is like going to the bookstore, getting a cookbook and calling yourself a chef.
You're proud of that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hey,
it's a good one. It's like
I must admit, like just having a few sort of like family health things at the moment, ChatGPT has been extremely helpful to inform me and guide me through things. But I'm obviously aware that I'm not taking it as absolute gospel, and I know that there's many variables, and I'm the first person to say that life, in my opinion, is grey. And I know that as human beings, we really want to make things black and white, but the reality is it's grey. And just like you said, you know, it's not one size fits all. There's just so many variables that are going to make things differ for each of us. But yeah, I just think it's fascinating to hear from someone, you know, in the industry that's dealing with people that come to them and, you know, self-diagnosed essentially.
A whole new world.
A very, very whole new world.
But then again, you know, like I give those people credit because at least they're making an effort to better themselves.
Proactive.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing with that.
Yep.
You know, like I don't think we should criticize people so much, you know, like the fact that they initiated like doing their own research, trying to think for themselves, right, and taking whatever they can, trying to apply it to their own conditions, and then coming to see a practitioner on top of that, like good on them.
Yeah,
so
100%. That's cool.
So tell us about your journey of bodybuilding and specifically your physique competitions, because you've done extremely well in your physique competitions. Many gold medals, #1 physique. You look absolutely ridiculous. So
Rigged up.
Absolutely rigged up. And we were talking before about sort of, you know, training for aesthetics versus training for sport, this and that. Like, what drew you to physique competitions and you know, wanting to compete at the highest level and take your physique and aesthetics to the highest level?
I think it's because I've always been a competitive individual, and when I was 23, 24, I kind of stopped, you know, playing sport, organized sport in the States, and all there was left was the gym. And I saw, you know, people competing at the time, and, you know, back when magazines were a thing, I'm like looking at like Muscle and Fitness, I'm like, oh, this is pretty dope, you know. And I kind of had that thought too. I'm like, nah, not me. Like, I ain't gonna be on some stage posing. But then one of the other trainers at the gym in Golds in the States, he was just like, oh, you have potential. Like, let's try to get you into a comp. And I'm like, yeah, let's go for it.
Sick.
So that's how that started. And then I kind of got the bug, hey, you know, like, oh, I placed at least, you know, in my first one, I placed 5th. Like, let's see how far we can push this type of thing. And then life got in the way for a while, and then I came back and started competing 4 years ago now, in 2021. And from that point on, it was a combination of the competition, you know, wanting to get a pro card, wanting to push the physique to the next level. But then now it's more of like a mental game for me. You know, it's more about mental growth and discovering sides you didn't find within you, like on that journey.
Yep.
You know, because with that, it's just like training for fight camp, right? You know, you sacrifice so much, and there's no instant gratification.
Yep.
And even a day of rest is not really a day of rest because you got to stay on the diet. So it's all the little 1% of things that, you know, you got to be locked in and dialed in all the time.
It's
and
testing
I think
yourself, hey? Like
100%.
always, yeah.
100%, because what do they say? Your level of success in life is directly related to the amount of stress that you can handle.
Yeah.
So that also is a big component, you know, like being able to go in to the gym 2-3 hours a day, sometimes 4, you know, when I'm like behind on my weight cut and stuff. Still coming in here trying to be the best as I can for the patients, you know, running the business. Did that event last year, being like a good friend, a good partner, all of that stuff, managing all those things at once. You know, that's, I guess, a lot for an individual, but it's like, how much can you take on, but yet do it well?
It's so important for each of us to have an outlet like that tests us mentally and physically and really pushes our personal and self-development, right? It's just like, if people don't have that, they really are missing out on such an important part of being a human being and growing and creating value in yourself, building self-esteem, resilience, all these sorts of things, which make it somewhat easier to get through the stresses of life, as you were mentioning before. It could be combat sports. It could be bodybuilding. It could be anything. But the same thing that you just expressed and mentioned about how you feel about competing in a physique competition is the same way we feel, you know, going into competition in combat sports. So it's like, it's so important, in my opinion, for people to find that for them. And if they don't have it, you know, I feel sorry for people, because it's so important to have that. And yeah, I just think it's fascinating watching you going through your prep while running your business and all these sorts of things. Like, you're pretty full on when it comes to getting everything done. Hey, when most people would say it's too much, you know, what is that in you? Like, is it like, what is your drive to succeed? Where does it come from? Like, are you running away from something? Are you running towards something? Like, what is your motive in the way you live your life?
I think just discovering my full potential, you know, and at the end of the day, like, I want to look back and be like, you know, I did everything that I potentially could and was the best I could be for those around me. And I think, you know, prepping for comms, prepping for, you know, the guys in the fight camp, you know, along that journey, you kind of really learn stuff about yourself. You kind of really find yourself, you know, when all the bullshit is taken away, all the distractions, and you have nothing left but to get the job done, you know? And it's kind of like in a superhero movie, right? Like when you watch the beginning of the superhero movie or like whatever movie, the guy's just an average dude, you know, doing his thing. Yeah, maybe a little bit stronger and whatnot. But then when the stress hits, when the conflict arises, the battle comes, you got two choices, right? You either step up and tap into those parts of you that you didn't even know existed, or you crumble. And every time in the movies, like, the superhero finds that potential, taps into the superpower, right? And I don't think without that stress, without that adversity, that most people find that. And I think that's why, you know, you say, like, you feel sorry for people who don't do that, because at the end of the day, I don't think those people really discover their full potential and who they are.
So good, man.
Great.
Find the superhuman in you.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think makes, like, what do you think the determining factor is for someone to choose, when they hit that fork in the road, to choose to either fight the adversity and turn into the superhuman, or to crumble?
I think it's that's just the integrity you hold within yourself.
Elaborate. Because this is controversial. I like it.
Oh man, there's layers to it, right? I think a lot of it has to do with our upbringing, who we surround ourselves with, our environment, and taking pride in who we are and what we do, and knowing that, you know, like for me, like, I think knowing that I quit on something just because something got difficult or hard would just eat me up inside. So I'd rather not live with that, and I'd rather go through the struggle and the adversity and see who I come out as on the other side.
100%.
Can you see, like, that mindset being developed from when you were a child? Like, did your parents instill that in you?
Yeah, definitely my parents. My parents, my culture, you know, growing up in Hawaii, and then definitely like my coaches in soccer, coaches in baseball. I know one of the biggest things, like even when we were kids, man, like 8-9 years old playing baseball, you know, their philosophy was like, training better be harder than the actual game.
Uh-huh.
You know, you better perform at a top level when you're tired, because when that time comes, like, you'll come out on top of your opponent every time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Being held accountable is so important, hey, whether it's a coach or someone within your tribe, family member or whatever, because the first moment that you quit and, you know, you choose to quit, or you choose to avoid something hard, and your surroundings give you permission to do that,
Yeah.
it becomes easier to slip and quit each and every time that you're hit with that adversity, right? So it's easier to make that decision because there's no sort of like negative response.
I like what you said before about like the word specifically of integrity. Like, it's you have integrity and accountability to your own beliefs. Like, that's sort of what I'm getting from that. Like, I believe that it's not okay to quit. I believe that I should be always putting myself in situations that forces me to grow. And if you're not abiding to that, then you don't have that integrity to yourself. I think that was cool how you said that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the only time you would quit or give up on something is if it's detrimental to someone else, or even yourself, you know, like, well, and then that's where, you know, the fine line of being tough and stupid.
Yep.
Fuck everyone, I'm getting what I want.
So, man, you've spent a few years now working with us and working with our fight team and things like that. Like, how are you enjoying working with combat sports athletes, and like, what are you seeing in the combat sports space related to other professional sporting arenas that you've worked in, and sort of what are your goals with our athletes specifically and anyone that comes to see you?
I love this space, man, and the community you guys have built is freaking awesome. You know, it's a very great environment to be in, positive environment. I think our values align. But with combat sports, you get to be really creative, you know, and you get to design rehab and programs tailored to not only the sport itself, but everyone has different styles too, right? You know, you're going to do something different for someone in BJJ than you would for, say, Taser getting ready for his fight. You're going to do something different for someone in the middle of fight camp than you would someone in the off season. And I guess you do the same thing with other sports, but you know, I think combat sports are very unpredictable, you know, and one specific aspect in physio with this, like there's no strapping, you know, you're not going to strap up someone because that's where the opponent's going to go for.
Yeah.
So you got to be really creative, I think, and think outside of the box with a lot of things. So that's what I like. And, you know, I'm just trying to get more involved because I see so much potential in the boys and, you know, the women too, like Healy and all them on a physical level that they still have yet to tap into, you know. And I think the more value I can provide, you know, with the injury prevention class, the more knowledge I can give, you can see the performance go up as well as, you know, reducing their risk of injury. So really excited.
Do you see like combat sports as like quite an unstructured space versus like, say, for example, you know, when we go to the Titans Rugby League club around the corner, it's just like they know they need to be at a specific place. They do their strength training, then they all go to sleep, and then they wake up, they go have their, you know, protein shakes, then they get on the field, and then they do field work and stuff like that. Like it's a very structured environment, training environment. Whereas like with MMA, like a lot of people probably don't even do S&C. So, you know, are you seeing sort of like an opportunity to build a better structure and a better program and a plan and just a baseline for people wanting to be the best combat sports athletes they can be?
Yeah, I think a big reason is because the sport itself is new in relative to all other sports, right? And I think it's evolving very rapidly as well compared to other sports. Yep. So that's a big thing. And then you're comparing a individual within a team type of environment to a team sport where you definitely need way more structure in a team environment because, you know, otherwise just you're hurting cats.
Yep.
So, and I don't know any professional athlete that doesn't do like top of the line, you know, elite professional athlete that doesn't have an S&C program.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, go look at any UFC champion. You think they don't do any S&C? So that's I try to wrap my head around that with people trying to train, you know, and fight here. You know, like, why wouldn't you do an S&C program? And I think it's just because they don't have the knowledge base of where to start, or, you know, it's if I do it wrong, there might be more harm or more risk of me messing my body up than avoiding it completely. So hopefully I can get out there and help a little bit more people get something structured and get to know their bodies more.
It's fascinating to be part of such a dynamic and highly varied skilled sport. And what I mean by that is, like, when people start out in combat sports, their real focus should be on their technical training because there's a lot of skills to learn to be somewhat competitive in the highest level. Like, you need to have a high level of technical ability by the time you get to, let's just say, the UFC, because the people you're going to be fighting are going to have a high level of technical ability. So you need to be competitive on that level. So if we only have a finite amount of time, maybe you're working, going to school, you've got family to look after, whatever it might be, you probably are going to focus most of your time on building a program around your technical skills training. But then when you get to a point where you are at a really high level and you're in the UFC, for example, or you're getting there, and your skills comparatively are quite high and you feel comfortable where those skills are at, then the defining factor becomes your athleticism, your conditioning, your strength, all these sorts of things, right? So, like, this is where it becomes so important to add these things to your game as you start elevating or progressing within the sport, because it becomes a competitive factor. You know, so not only your technical ability is one factor, but now your athleticism, your strength and conditioning, all those sorts of things are another factor. Because you can have all the skills in the world, but if someone else is just far superior in their athleticism to you, you see a lot of the time in combat sports, they just run over you.
Yeah.
You know, so you do need to, you know, be competitive or comparative from an athletic perspective as well. When do you start, I guess, is the question. Like, do you start straight away, or is it just, if you have the time, you can start straight away, start small, start building a foundation and building up? Do you start the foundation of your physique first before you go into your technical training? I mean, I know what my answer would be, but like, how do you guys sort of see the progression of balancing technical skills versus non-technical abilities as you progress through your career as a combat sports athlete specifically?
Well, like from what I've seen on the combat sports scene is a lot of people rely on their toughness. But past a certain point, everybody's tough. You know, everybody's driven, everybody's sacrificed everything to do what they're doing.
Because that's what that got them there.
Yeah, 100%. But then, like you said, exactly, once you get past a certain point, everyone has that. So you need to be on par with the other aspects of the game, no matter what it is. If you put too much reliance into, I'm just tough, or I'm just fast, or, you know, the talent aspects perhaps of the skill tree, then you'll get yourself into hot water the further on you go, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. And I think you should always prioritize the technical skills and the training, the sport itself, before everything else, right? So we got to see it as the strength and conditioning, the injury prevention, all that stuff, as a complement to what you're trying to do, you know? And take that talent, as you mentioned, and how do we optimize that?
Yep.
How do we optimize that talent? Because, you know, you could be the most talented relative to everyone around you, but you're probably hitting 50% of your potential.
Yep.
So relative to yourself, you know, you're not at a level that you could be at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so fascinating. And then the other thing that I think I see a bit, which is really interesting as well, is creating a cohesive communication plan between all of the technical and non-technical leaders that make up your programs, because a lot of the time you might go and work with a strength and conditioning coach, but they have no idea about what your technical skills training program looks like and when your high days or your low days are and things like that. And you get there and they just blast you for the sake of blasting you, and then you're actually not well set up or primed for your technical training throughout the week. Like you're gassed, your nervous system's fucked, your whatever it might be. So it's like they're actually doing it more of a disservice than good by the way that they're programming, you know, your week, because they don't know what else you're doing. So I think it is a responsibility for the athlete to ensure that, you know, everything is connected. They're at least sharing the program with the strength and conditioning coach. The strength and conditioning coach isn't there trying to be the hero of the athlete's story. They're there to complement the athlete, give them what they need, but not overexert them to the point where they can't do, you know, what they need to do. I think that's something that I see a lot too.
Yeah, and I think for us that create the programs for these athletes, we gotta avoid falling into the trap as seeing the S&C program in a vacuum.
Yep.
So we got to take that into context with everything. Like, if you do it properly, you have to take into context everything else. Otherwise, you know, you're not developing a SSC program properly.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Any final words, boys, before we wrap this up? I think apologies in advance. My head is cooked, so my questions are probably pretty fucked. But Mana, I've just been loving some sound bites that you've been throwing out there.
There's been plenty.
I think
We got some nuggets.
yeah,
It's great to have you on, bro.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Oh, man,
really,
it's a
really,
pleasure.
really enlightening chat. Honestly, like it's fucking awesome to hear someone with your expertise share like so candidly your opinions on the state of health and the state of sport. It's really valuable for a lot of people. So yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. You know, like, I love talking about this kind of shit. Can go on for days, but yeah, like just everything, you know, life, culture, health, wellness, all that. Love that stuff. So thank you guys for making time for this.
we'll have plenty more chats with you, man. And we love that you're part of this community and you're leading, you know, some of our higher level athletes to, you know, great heights. And yeah, everyone can work with you. So like, you don't even need to be part of CMBT Training Center to work with Mana, guys. Like, reach out to him wherever you are. If you're from another combat sports gym, don't even worry about it. We don't have those politics. Come in and see Mana. Get yourself sorted. Get strong. Build the foundation. Be harder to kill. Think about your longevity, and don't wait till you get injured. But if you're injured, come and see Mana, because he'll make sure you're sorted.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And remember, you're not broken. You just haven't been built.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
perfect way to end. Thank you, guys.
Cheers,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Thanks for listening.
All right, thanks, boys.